Hi, I'm Mandi Xu. I'm a principal in Russell Kennedy's Workplace Relations, Employment and Safety team based in Sydney. For the past 15 years, I've been helping organisations and businesses navigate our complex regulatory regime in this area throughout the whole life cycle of the employment relationship.
Hi, I'm Sara Ibrahim and I'm a lawyer and I work closely with Mandi in Russell Kennedy's Workplace Relations, Employment and Safety team in Sydney. So Mandi and I have been reflecting on the different matters that have come across our desk in 2024. We noticed that there was a significant increase in three different areas. Firstly, applications made to the Fair Work Commission, particularly in the form of general protections and unfair dismissal claims. There's also been an increase in psychological injury claims. And finally, workplace complaints and investigations. What's interesting though is typically there's an interplay between these three different areas. This trend is actually reflected in the Fair Work Commission's latest annual report, Access to Justice, where the Commissioner reported that in the past year, 2023 to 2024, it was the busiest period on record yet. The Commission actually received a staggering 40,000 applications, which was a 27% jump from the previous year, and the highest ever record of applications being made since the introduction of the Fair Work Act. So Mandi, what do you think are driving these claims?
I believe there are four key factors driving this trend. Employees are more informed than ever about their rights, and we're seeing this reflected in the complexity of the workplace complaints and as well as employment disputes that come across our desk. Economic instability is another contributing factor. Financial uncertainty and market volatility, both within Australia and globally, is placing increasing pressure on businesses. And it's been reported that 40% of workers are now prioritising job security over pay. And this signals a climate of uncertainty where there's been a shift in workers valuing job stability and long-term career prospects over pay increase. Change management is another driver in some of this trend. And what I mean by that is, in this kind of economic climate, we are seeing changes at the leadership level in organizations and businesses. And new leadership leads to organizational transformation, restructure, shifts in workplace culture, changes in policies and procedures. And this is what we call or refer to in the HR lifecycle as the disruption phase. And while some employees will see this phase as creating new opportunities and they will really thrive in this environment, more commonly the types of reaction that we see are employees who might initially have denial or resistance to the change. They may also have fear, anxiety about the uncertainties that the change brings, and it could also lead to frustration and even anger. And this leads to the fourth factor, which is mental health issues in the workplace and awareness around these issues.
Mandi, you mentioned mental health awareness, and from my understanding, it's a growing issue in the workplace. Even for an example, psychological injury workers' compensation claims have increased by 36.9%. And I guess there could be another driving factors for it, which include awareness or destigmatisation of mental health issues. But from your view, do you know anything else that could be driving this?
Certainly the point that you mentioned, Sarah, about increased awareness by employees about their rights and also about these mental health issues. But the other factor that's playing into it is post-COVID environment. Everyone's working in a hybrid environment whereby there is a blurring of the lines between personal life and work life. And that's creating a circumstance whereby we are seeing mental health issues become a topic of conversation in the workplace. However, it's important to understand that the impact of mental health issues in the workplace is not just an increase in claims, but also there's a real and significant financial impact on businesses. For example, the median payout for a psychological injury claim is nearly 4 times higher than that of other work-related injuries. And the average time off work for a psychological injury claim is 34 weeks, as compared to only 8 weeks for physical injuries. And on average, psychological injury claims cost more than 3 times and leads to a significant length of time off work as compared to physical injuries. and it's being estimated that mental health issues in the workplace has cost Australian businesses $39 billion per year because of absentees, loss of productivity, and staff turnover.
Wow, Mandi, those statistics are really eye-opening. I guess my next question would be, are there any other contexts which you think psychological injury claims could be made?
Yes, definitely. For example, change management processes that I mentioned earlier, performance improvement, organizational restructures. Those are very typical scenarios, and it's important to understand that within those processes, that can give rise to a range of psychosocial hazards and risks that needs to be viewed collectively and not in isolation. So a common scenario that we come across is, for example, in an organizational restructure, you could have an employee who's been with the company for over 5 years. He's worked with a manager where little feedback is provided. A new manager is appointed as part of the change management process. This new manager has a very different managerial style to the predecessor. And this new manager might also be subject to KPIs such as creating a high-performance team culture, which means that this manager is giving this employee now constructive feedback. The employee, as part of the change management, their role and also duties may also be under review. So they may be asked to perform new and additional duties to what they're used to. Now, if the conversation with this employee about these changes and the restructure is not managed well, then you could have a situation when the employee feels increasingly anxious, fearful, and frustrated. And if these negative feelings continue for a long period of time, this creates a risk of psychosocial hazards in the workplace that may result in a psychological injury claim.
I guess, Mandi, going on from that, I can definitely see how that would be challenging, especially for new managers having to navigate that. What would be your, tips of advice in those circumstances?
I would suggest that the manager speak to HR. That would be the first step. Make sure that they're part of the conversation about the process in communicating with the employee. And, if there are red flags in the process or in the conversations they have initially with the employee, then that's where they should really reach out to us or the internal in-house counsel to see if there are any potential legal risks that they need to factor in and incorporate into the process.
Thanks, Mandi. That was really helpful. I think one thing I just want to add on is that I've seen that the workplace obviously has undergone a huge change of dynamics, and because of that, we're now seeing a blurred lines between personal life and work life. And I guess my question for you is, do you think that could be a reason why we're seeing an increase in complaints being made?
Yes, that's a really a good observation. Certainly that's playing into increasing complaints, both informally and formally. And also, workplace investigation is actually not a new thing in the workplace. We've always had it, but we are seeing an increase in the types of complexity in terms of the allegations that's being raised in these complaints. And the other point I should make is that there's also more of an interplay between complaints about bullying, harassment, and discrimination, and also other issues such as performance improvement issues, as well as behavioural or conduct issues. So certainly it's becoming more complex, and therefore companies need to really carefully map out how they're going to conduct a workplace investigation, whether internally or externally, and getting professional advice if need be.
That's really true, Mandi, and I think following on from what you have just said, I think we could also include another factors. One being the post-COVID hybrid working model. That's definitely seen and created a lot of challenges for not only the workers but also the employers. Also, following the global Me Too movement and recent Australian legislative reforms, we've definitely seen a cultural shift in not only Australian media, also workplaces, and just generally the wider community in saying a no tolerance to sexual harassment or sex-based harassment. I think it all should be said that personal issues definitely come into play with that. So that could be anything like health concerns, family challenges, any personal issues really. And when those manifest into the workforce, they can really exacerbate and cause internal conflict with one another or increase workplace stress. So that's really something that I guess employers, what we've seen too, should definitely consider, and also take into account that people might be dealing with their own issues and these could be brought and come into work. So it's definitely a factor to consider. And I think the last one would definitely be the increase in training. So because of that, which is obviously a great aspect of it, but comes with that leads to a greater awareness of staff's rights and responsibilities. And in doing that, then employees are likely more willing to participate in the investigation or even report conduct of any concerns that they have. So I think that's definitely got a play into it too.
That's right, Sarah. And I guess the flip side of employees becoming more aware about their rights and also about the company's policies around harassment, bullying, and also discrimination, and making informal or formal grievances, is that we're also seeing a growing trend of employees challenging the outcomes of investigations, and also challenging whether the investigative process is fair and reasonably conducted.
So Mandy, we've spoken a lot about what we've seen in 2024 in the employment space, and from our thinking, it appears that these trends will continue well into 2025. So if we look back, this really will be applications made to the Fair Work Commission. We think that this will still be the primary legal avenue that employees will make, and that's really because the Commission is a very cost-effective and accessible jurisdiction for all employees. We also expect that psychological injury rates will continue to rise at a rate that will well outpass physical injury claims. And finally, mental health issue isn't just a personal issue. It's really an industry-wide challenge, and what comes with that is significant financial, legal, and productivity consequences.
That's right, Sarah. Those are the continuing trends that we're seeing. And as you said, psychological injury claims is increasing at a overwhelming pace. And that's actually reflected in the New South Wales Treasurer's recent announcement in March, where he's proposed that they're going to review the current New South Wales workers' compensation system. And interestingly, they're proposing to introduce a new jurisdiction in the New South Wales Industrial Relations Commission, where it's proposed that there will be a requirement where a bullying harassment claim will need to be made before an employee lodges a psychological injury claim in the workers' compensation system. So it'll be interesting to see developments in this space.
Wow. Do you have any preliminary views on that?
I think the idea behind the proposal is that it's meant to be a deterrent for individuals to bring psychological injury claims where really there is no proper basis or, with no proper merits in their claims. However, I think from what we can see, there's so much complexity in the factual matrix of a psychological injury claim that I think that, the increase will still continue, but there will be additional barriers and additional process in that that they have to start in the employment jurisdiction first.
Interesting. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
That's right.
And Mandy, with greater staff awareness about employees' workplace rights and legal protections, what would you, I guess, suggest as key actionable steps to take for businesses and organisations?
I would say that the key actionable step is to actually reach out to us at an early stage. And the reason why I say that is because often when these matters come across our desk, the organisation or business is already in the middle of a change management process, or workplace investigation, or a performance improvement process. And often by that stage, the situation is somewhat complex, and also the employment relationship might be already unsalvageable. And the employee might well be on their way to making a legal claim. Having a conversation with us early means that we can actually assist you with designing that process and making sure that we identify hazards and risks that you need to be aware of and incorporate into that process so that it is more effective, and you don't get into situations where the employee is challenging you about that process. But also, we can assist with identifying ways in which that we can help your organisation put you in a position where if a claim arises later on, we're in a more defendable position.
Well, it's been great chatting to you, Mandy, and discussing all our learnings from the past year.
Yes, it's been great having this conversation, and for everyone tuning in at home, Thank you for joining us, and please watch this space for further discussions in the future.